where do you still need to get better?
Um, that's a pretty broad question. I feel like we've gotten better really everywhere. I feel like our collective understanding of what we're trying to do and defensive and offensive spacing has both really gotten better. I feel like individual players have gotten better, and you know where we can continue to improve is like in really all areas. You know, individually, collectively, um, we've all got to just kind of keep improving. And I think there's a battle you got to fight this time of year. Not internally all the time, but that you are kind of just what you are, and this is what you are. And I think until the last horn goes off of the last game, that you can continue to get better collectively, individually. Coaches can coach better. So, I feel like we've gotten better in all areas. Defensively, you kind of morph each year, and different teams have different identities and different strengths. And, I think one thing that this team has done particularly well that some of the previous teams that I've coached didn't do well is, we do a good job of playing without the foul. And we've consistently, you know, done that well, and it's given us advantage. And we've made more free throws than our opponents have attempted in several games, and that's even with some of the struggles from the foul line. That could improve. Really cashing in on those opportunities when you get to the foul line. So, specifically, um, I think you just continue to evolve as a team and get better.
Fair. Thank you.
Mike.
Hey coach, how you doing?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Not bad. Um, so UCF on deck, and you actually play them twice here before the end of the year. Most fans maybe would be surprised that UCF, they're not really a college basketball power. They don't have the history of, say, West Virginia, would be this good. And the metrics have liked them more than West Virginia. Do you have any thoughts on why they have been viewed as so much better in the metrics? Is that at all in your brain that, hey, we need these are bigger games because if we beat them, we kind of flip the script on where we are right now nationally? And then, separate, are you at all surprised by UCF doing this? How do you think they've done this? It seems a pretty quick turnaround for this program that's not traditionally been a basketball school, maybe for the public.
Yeah, I think you got to give, Coach Dawkins and his staff, a ton of credit, man. I mean, I think anytime you, even though he's been there 10 years, anytime you're coaching a team where not one player was back the year before, and, you have a winning record in the Big 12, you've positioned yourself to be in the NCAA tournament. Yeah, I mean, he's done one of the best coaching jobs this year that a lot of people may not talk about, and they've just done a good job. It's not easy. It's not easy to again have no points returning and be 6-5 in the Big 12, 11 games in, and they should be commended for that. I think they did a great job of finding players from different experiences. And you look at like Folks and Stillwell were teammates at Milwaukee, so they have a little chemistry together, and they brought them as a package there. And then some of the other guys, um, like Riley Cagle, and some of those other guys were, Power Five transfers that had bounced around a little bit, and they've seemed to really settle in. And Coach Dawkins has found a way to get a lot out of those guys. Devin Cambridge was at Arizona State, then he goes to Texas Tech. Now he's there, and so I just think you got to give, their staff, a lot of credit and give Coach Dawkins a lot of credit for, um, you know, and that's the beauty of this time period that we're living in. There's like the gift and then there's the curse. The gift can be that you can assemble a group of guys together when everybody, the outside world may have left them for dead and they're not going to be very good. And then he put this group together and it's worked very well for them this year. And they had a great schedule and they took advantage of it and they've positioned themselves well.
And then I know you don't get bogged down on this. You've talked about this before, but do you have any thoughts on why they have been viewed as quote unquote ranked or better in the metrics than West Virginia? Very similar record, very similar resumes, but just where they are in Ken Palm, et cetera, they are in better position most of the year than where you have been. Do you have
Yes,
any thoughts on that?
yeah, I mean, well, I think some of it is, the way Ken Palm can be weighted. So, for instance, when we beat Campbell way back at the beginning of the year, and Ken Palm has predictive scores just kind of like, Vegas does or whatever.
Yeah.
And well, we beat Campbell by 8 instead of beating them by 16. We dropped 11 spots in Ken Palm that year, that
Yeah.
that that night. Um, we go get beat really, really bad at Arizona, and we didn't drop one spot in Ken Palm.
Yeah.
Um, so some of it, the way that Ken Palm is just, again, it's data driven, it's metric driven, and it does reward you for, beating a team badly if you can. And it doesn't always
Okay. Yeah.
equate for just if you won the game or you lost the game. And so that's where, like I said, if you look at that, we're what I don't know what we were today, 60, 61 this morning in Kim Palm. Had you beat Campbell by what they thought you were going to beat them, maybe you're sitting here and you're 49 right now instead of 60. And that's the way Kim Palm works. And then also Kim Palm, because you have to have a starting point for where it starts you. Kim Palm also relies on historical data from the previous teams or previous players. So even if you put a roster together of, say you had a player that, you know, I'm just talking not specifically about this one, but if you had a JUCO player that is a very good player for you, he's going to have no historical Ken Palm data. He won't factor into that at all.
Yeah.
Whereas if a player was a very efficient player at a Division One, so some of it, like, you do have to start somewhere, and then, specifically when you get chances or when you're playing a team and you're supposed to beat them bad. I mean, I think the two biggest drops maybe in Kim Palm this year for us were, the Campbell game and then maybe the Baylor home game. And then ironically, going and playing a really good team like Iowa State on the road and you get beat bad, it just doesn't drop you that much. But if you're supposed to beat a team by 15 or 20 and you beat them by 10, you're going to drop in the metrics.
Thank you.
Yep.
John?
Yeah, I was looking at the league standings here, and when you get past the top five, I think there's 8 teams between 6 and 4 wins in the league, and you're one of them. And I think you've got, of all your games remaining, you play most of those teams except for two. What's kind of surprised you about the league, and particularly the way all those teams are bunched together and where you are right now with a month to go?
Yeah, I wouldn't say anything's really like surprised me about the league. I think, which we all know this year, that the Big 12 is back to being where it was. I do think it dipped down a little bit last year. I think everybody would agree it wasn't quite as good as it was, but this year with how strong it is at the top, I think it's probably pushed the middle and the bottom even more
Yeah.
jumped up. And they the top has, whether it's Arizona or Houston, Iowa State. Not that those teams still can't lose to anybody on any night, but they have separated themselves a little bit. And then I think what you see in the middle portions or to the bottom part of the league is just a very, very small margin of error and separation on a nightly basis, with really any team having the capability to beat any team. And like I've kind of mentioned this before in previous press conference, it's like as soon as you kind of want to write somebody off and leave them for dead, then they jump up, and that's where it's so hard, I think, for all of us. And obviously, media, everybody has jobs to do, so you've got to kind of write some sort of narrative after these
Right.
games and what it can mean and what it means. But like that's all that's why I've always said, like, you don't know what today, what, a couple weeks ago you beat Arizona State on the road, and everybody's like, "Oh, well, you should just beat Arizona State on the road because they're whatever." And then you
Yeah.
look back on it now, you're like, "Shoot,
Yeah.
that was a pretty good win." Same thing with Cincinnati last.
Cincinnati.
know, you beat them, and everybody's like, "Oh, well, they're just, like." Again, you get into this weird idea that like, well, we should beat Cincinnati, and then, well, they beat Iowa State by 25 at home, and they beat a very good Central Florida at home, and then they went on the road and did what they did last night, and so it's just hard to kind of like, you
Yeah.
know, but I know everybody has to, like, we all got to write narratives, and we got to write, and like you got to kind of
Try to
don't
figure it out.
know,
Yeah.
but none of us know,
Right.
honestly. And over the course of this last month, I think you can see a lot of movement both ways, and that's where, I think from my standpoint and our team, it's boring. It sounds like no one wants to hear it, but man, you better just be thinking about that next game and not straying too far off from that.
How much has team matchups played in the results this year? Is that played a role?
I think when you play people,
Okay.
the timing of where you caught them, maybe in reference to where they were coming from prior to you playing them. Like I've mentioned, sometimes you can play a team at home, but if you were on a long road trip and they had two home games in a row,
Yeah.
they're probably the more rested team than you, even though you have the home court advantage. So I think there's a lot of, like, to your point, a lot of external factors, that can play into, and then sometimes, man, people, you have because all the players are talented in this league and all the coaches are good. And on some nights you have, a player that maybe you didn't think was going to jump up, and he's got a hot hand and he beat you.
Last one from me. Were you able to take advantage of the week with the time off?
Yeah, yeah, and so for us, like, the buy was good. It was a little, it was a little, you know, different because you played on Sunday. So like if it was Saturday, you would for sure have just took Sunday and Monday off, no doubt about it. But with where we were, and we did decide to go ahead and take Monday and Tuesday off and got back after it on Wednesday, and then got back today this morning, and you're in full prep mode for. So I think it was a good combination of getting away a little bit, getting a little mental and physical rest, and then getting a good day of playing and prepping just for ourselves. And now you're back in your normal routine.
Justin.
Hey, Coach, how you doing?
I'm good.
Hey, on UCF, obviously, you've talked about some of their results this year. Obviously, they beat Kansas, they beat Texas Tech, um, but then, there's been some disappointments there for UCF as well. When they're good, what are you seeing? When they're struggling, what are you seeing? Seems like they're a pretty good team rebounding team. Um, when they have big wins, they don't turn the ball over, but then they turn the ball over in other games. Just what are you seeing there with the ups and downs of UCF?
Yeah, I don't know if I would, again, I don't know if I would describe it as like ups and downs necessarily. I mean, they're 12-2 at home. Their two home losses are to Vanderbilt, who obviously is very good, I don't know specifically where they are, but I know for a little while they were winning the SEC, and then they lost at home in a very competitive game to Arizona. Um, which we've seen, how good Arizona is. And then, some of their other losses, again, they've lost to good teams on the road.
Right.
Um, so again, they're just like most teams, they're good at home. Again, to me, it starts with Fulks. He's probably been as impactful as any player has been in the Big 12 this year. Those freshmen get a lot of attention, as they should. They're they're special players, but just as it pertains to the impact that one player has had on their team and the impact on winning, I think you'd be hard pressed to find anybody that's having a more impactful year than Fulks is. And he's so reliable, he's so strong, takes care of the ball, and they've put good shooting around him and good length and some interchangeable pieces. So, you know, they've been very consistent at home, which is where we have to play them next. And like anybody else, you go on the road in this league, and maybe you don't have the best version of yourself, and you're catching somebody else on their home floor, then you can get beat.
Coach, the you're talking about the bye. Obviously, the bye got built in for the Big 12 teams because of the change from 20 to 18 games. Um, I'm kind of wondering if there's a give and take on that, and the fact that obviously it's good to have a midweek off and to rest and get healthy, get right. Um, there's also two more non-conference games you have to schedule, and that can play, you know, some factors in the metrics and stuff, depending on who those two games are against. I'm wondering, in your opinion, is the bye week worth the the other side of what happens because of the bye week?
In my personal opinion, yes. Yes. Again, I've never been part of a league that didn't have it at least one bye, but just hearing people talk about last year and going through that gauntlet with no bye, I mean, it's hard enough as it is, and it's such a physical league. And again, you got to be so sharp mentally each night that as much as you need a little physical break, you need a mental break as well.
Thank you, Coach.
Kevin?
Coach, has a final decision been made on Jackson Field's status for this year?
Not, I wouldn't say a final decision. I mean, I think as you guys know, I mean, all signs are trending towards, applying for that medical red shirt. And, we want to be obviously supportive of him. And like any of these guys, you don't want to put them out there unless they're, 100% rate. So we haven't 100% right. I'm sorry. We haven't made like a final call on it, but all signs are pointing in that direction.
How much have his wishes played into that? I'm sure you've talked with him a lot, but in the end, does the decision kind of come down to him if you think he can help your team?
Yeah, I mean, but ultimately, again, you want to be supportive of, you don't ever want to put anybody out there on the floor that may not feel like they're at their 100% best. In particular, you're not talking about a sprained ankle, or you're not talking about a busted eye, or a jammed finger. I mean, he had a legit surgery deep into the end of the summer and wasn't cleared till very late. And you may get a little boost of adrenaline coming back, but the grip strength, his ability to lift weights, was significantly impacted. And if you're just not feeling great or feeling like you can be at your best, you don't want to, again, a coach's job and a medical staff, their job is to evaluate all that and put the student athletes in the best position that they can be in long term for their health as well.
Mike C.
Hey Ross, how are you?
Hey, Mike.
Question for you. I don't know how much you keep up with your peers and some of the things they say after games, but a couple of them had pretty visible, I guess you'd say viral moments in post game stuff this year. Just out of your experience here, is there something about the competition in the league and the things you were talking about top to bottom that I don't know, does it drive coaches crazy a little bit and maybe makes them think and act a little bit out of character?
Yeah, I don't know. You know, Mike, that's a good question. You know, you'd have to probably ask, you know, each individual, you know, for themselves, but you know, can coaching, you know, can it maybe bring out some of your, you know, worst qualities? Probably, you know, and gives you, but then it gives you the opportunity to show some true resilience. And that's kind of one thing that, you know, just when you mention about that, I mean, there's been a couple of situations like we talked about earlier. Like there's been a couple situations maybe at time due to some of those viral moments that you would think like, you know, well what, you know, maybe the messaging looks bleak, and then teams have responded really well and went out there and played great, you know, after that. And ultimately, I think that's what all of us are trying to do. And then I think there's also a part of some of the coaches, and you know, maybe they don't feel like being, you know, politically correct, and under the climate that we're all operating in, feel like, you know, you don't have to be as protective of the criticism that you levy on your team, because there is some truth to that these guys are, you know, compensated at a good level. And you know, you know, why do I get all the blame? You know what I mean? Just that's not me thinking. That's not my thing. And I want to shoulder all the blame. I tell our guys all the time, I'm a little guy, but I got a big back, and I don't mind bearing the brunt of that. You know, but yeah, I just think I don't know. Like I said, I mean, it's a great question. You know, it's a great question, and you know, it's a grind, man. Like we've talked about that before. Just the competitive environment and the venues that you're in, and how good each team is you play. And if you're not razor sharp and your team isn't razor sharp, then you're gonna get your butt kicked.
What is the challenge been for you? Like for example, you laid out a couple of points here that probably make sense. That maybe sometimes you want to grab somebody by the shoulders and shake them and scream it at them for they're asking you a question that there's a pretty good answer to. But you know, you played a game like Arizona, it's the number one team in the country that didn't lose for 3 months, and they played really well that day. You don't want to say, all right, that's Arizona, but you're playing at Arizona. That's tough. But you've also like some of your losses, you played top seven teams on the road too, and I imagine there's a whole lot that goes on that maybe people don't quite grasp that you kind of have to explain, but also stifle too, because the line between explanation and excuses is pretty thin too. But how have you kind of gone through that this year with everything you know that you wish everybody else knew?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think, you know, you said it best. There is a fine line between excuses and reasons. And, you know, I think as a coach, you got to do the best job you can to create accountability structures where accountability needs to be. And then also having the emotional intelligence to understand, you know, that if you're going to go play, you know, Houston on the road and they've lost one game in there in 3 years, that you are going to have to play so well and so good, um, and shoot the ball. Primarily, you're going to have to shoot the ball really, really well in an environment like that. Um, that you know, you can't allow a game like that to spill over to the next game, and you do have to turn the page really quick. Now, I think on my end, what we've always done, whether it was Arizona or Houston or Iowa State or Texas Tech or any of those, you know, great teams, in the midst of those games, there still are tons of plays that we should have made regardless of whether you were playing Houston or whether you were playing Lehigh. And that's where the accountability has to come in. Like, hey, regardless of who you're playing, like you did not check and block out. You did not sprint back. You know, we did not meet this pass and we were not strong. And so it's not like you can completely absolve accountability from those situations. Um, and no matter who you're playing. And that's where we've kind of landed on those situations, Mike, specifically is like, okay, like let's look at this from a objective standpoint, and these are the things we did not do that we can do, you know, regardless of how great the other team is and how good their talent is. These are things we could control in this game. We didn't control them. Let's get better. Let's fix these things.
Greg.
Yeah, Ross, when you've gone this far into the season without facing UCF and now you know you're going to be playing them basically twice in 3 weeks, does that add any, I guess, element of uniqueness to the first matchup?
Um, I wouldn't, I wouldn't say no. Again, just the way that these leagues ran into similar situations in our previous league, just the way that leagues are formed now without true round robins, and you have TV involved, and you have travel involved, and you have a league that's spread out across multiple time zones that there's going to be some scheduling irregularities with when you play people and how you play them. To your point, we've played Cincinnati twice, haven't even played them once, but it doesn't change much from a preparation standpoint or a mindset standpoint. Other than the fact, like you said, you'll see them really close together, but it doesn't change much.
Mike A.
So, Coach, you mentioned that especially on the road, you gotta shoot, you gotta be able to successfully shoot at a high percentage. That was an issue against Texas Tech, at least early in the game, and then you didn't get enough from Eagle staff and Huff, even though I know you mentioned after the game the loose balls that you focused in on, and that was kind of the most frustrating part for you. But when your team is not at its best shooting and goes through scoring droughts, is there anything that can be done to remedy that in the game outside of just getting more loose balls? Like, what are your thoughts on the shot selection of the team? I know there are some that feel that when you guys start, shooting cold, that sometimes the shot selection isn't that great, and then it compounds and makes it worse. What can be done to still try to win that given game, regardless of who you're playing, if you're not shooting well? Since that seems like that's kind of the clear, just easy thing to say between most of your losses, that it's just poor shooting nights outside of other issues, of course.
Yeah, you can, again, you can do a lot of different things. You can maybe send more people to the offensive glass. You can make a decision to send all five players to go rebound instead of maybe getting some of your guards back. Um, Again, you can try your best to manipulate some of the spacing components of where help is being offered from, and then, like we've talked about a lot on here, there has to be individual accountability from the players as well. That, again, if you're not, if you're open, or you're getting to the foul line, you know, you gotta step up there and make those, because that too helps alleviate scoring droughts. Scoring droughts are elongated if you go to the foul line and you miss both free throws multiple times, and so um, haven't been super crazy with. I mean, I haven't really looked at a time where I've watched back and watched our games and just thought like, oh man, like we've completely lost our way. We're taking horrendous shots. Um, but I think it's more to your point, and I stand by it after even watching the film multiple times. There was 4 or 5 loose balls that we had an opportunity to come up with that we did not come up with, and it led directly to Texas Tech baskets. So if you come up with 2 of those and you make 5 more free throws, let me say you make all your free throws. Well, now you probably win by 3 or 4, and it's just not as complicated as it may seem, and feels as bad as it does feel when you go through those scoring droughts, or you're having a hard time freeing up some of those other guys. It's kind of a two-part solution. You can go offensive rebound, you can, and then when you get opportunities to a man, which all these guys are young men now, to from a young man to younger men, when you have opportunities to step into these situations where you're open or you're at the foul line, you gotta convert. And if we're not converting, then we got to go rebound it. I mean, those are your options. There's not a lot of other options.
Yeah. And not to put words in your mouth at all, but does a lot of this connect to effort?
Uh, I think our effort has always been pretty good. I think
Okay.
the expectation and the urgency wanes at times, in particular in some of our starts. And again, you get to start that game the other day, there's 4 or 5 loose ball situations, and we didn't really come up with any of them. A couple times they were the first to the floor. These are things we pride ourselves on. And these are also things that reasons why we've been able to win games prior, undergoing some of the same struggles that you're talking about. And so I think it's the urgency and the consistency, not letting your offense dictate your defense. And oh, by the way, when you get opportunities to step up and make an offensive play, and that's what I love about our team. Again, they ain't pointing the finger. Nobody's pointing the finger at anybody. They'll stand up and they know. I mean, you can ask, they'll know. They'll be honest with you. And so yeah, all that.
We'll take two more, Justin, then Mike.
Coach, I got a recruiting question for you on Miles Sadler. Obviously, he's putting together a pretty special last year there in high school, and obviously you're busy with working with the team this year. So much work goes into getting a guy signed, and you would think, well, the work's over once he's already signed. But I'm just kind of wondering, how has that relationship continued with Miles? Now that he's signed, you're busy with your team, he's busy with the senior year, but I imagine there's still a developing relationship between the two of you.
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely want to stay connected to what they're doing, and they're connected to what we're doing, and you're not only myself but all of our staff, and not only with Miles but the rest of his family and coaches and everything. So yeah, you want to continue to strengthen those relationships and bonds, and try to stay connected not only to Miles but all those guys, Lou and Kingston, and try to get to know each other as much as you can. So by the time they get on campus in June, you feel like there is some connectivity already.
Have you had a chance to watch him at all much this year, or?
Yeah, yeah. When we're not playing, or again, just like our games, most of their games now are streamed on
Yeah.
some level, and so yeah, when we're not playing, not like I said, not only just myself, but we're all watching and extremely excited about him and what he's doing with his team, and so yeah.
Thank you, Coach.
And we'll close with Mike.
Ross, you've kind of mentioned a couple of times that you can coach better, you have to coach better. I'm curious how you figure out where to start when you're critiquing yourself, and then I'm guessing you're not putting a whole lot of new stuff in, and where's the practice time for that? But I don't know how to. Well, just take me through that if you don't mind.
Yeah, I think again, a coach's primary job is to try to put his players in the best position that they can be in to have success. So you're always kind of evaluating that. And even now, I think you can still find ways to, steal a couple baskets here and there, even if it's something you haven't ran, whether it's out of a timeout, out of a halftime, and um, and again, just finding that fine line balance of holding guys accountable, but at the same time, making sure they understand that you believe in them, which is important. And I think it's easy as a player, probably easy for all of us. You could be told 5 very positive things about the stories you write, Mike, you know what I mean? But maybe the one negative someone has to say stings more than the five positives. And I've always felt like, with players in particular, they do get corrected so much that you got to make sure that you balance that out with, telling them how much you believe in them and how they've gotten better and so that they're still seeing that side of it as well. And again, that's where, from a coaching standpoint, how can you help them, just help them, all of it, help them shoot the ball better, help them make free throws, help them defend better. Again, a lot of it's just finding new ways to attack other people with how you're being guarded and um, just making sure that you're doing your part. Because I think at times the easiest crutch a coach can use is just to blame his players. And sometimes that blame is warranted, but other times it's easy to try to remove yourself from difficult situations to force all the blame on the players and kind of like, well, if they just do what I would tell them to do, we'd win. Sometimes that is right, and sometimes you can do better. And so I'm always going to start with myself and trying to figure out what I can do better. And what I can do better is what I just mentioned throughout this process. Try to find a way to steal the 6 to 8 points a game that maybe someone hasn't seen. Make decisions on, how do we want to defend other people. I thought there was, a handful of decisions defensively in that Texas Tech game that myself and the staff, made the wrong decision. And now when you're playing against great players and other great coaches, you can get put in difficult situations, but that's part of my job too, to make sure that we're always trying to make the best decisions we can to give our guys the best chance to win.
All right. Speaking of difficult situations and great decisions here, this is way far down the road, but have you thought about filling out an all conference bracket yet?
No, no, I haven't, man. I haven't, but
Can you
yeah.
entertain me for a second? How difficult is that going to be? I'm assuming it's you. You don't delegate to your staff or the SID, right?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I'll do it. I may ask their opinions, or if I really get stuck on one or two guys. But yeah, man, just the amount of talent in the league this year is incredible. And then, like we said, man, even when you get into like, coach of the year, I mean, there's a ton of people that are just doing incredible jobs with their teams. Like Coach Dawkins, like we mentioned. I mean, he's, again, to take over a brand new team and have him in the position that he's in is impressive. Coach Self with everything that he's the ups and downs, and then you get Coach Lloyd. I mean, just all across the board, man. Newcomer of the year, freshman of the year, first team. I mean, yeah, there's the depth and the the amount of players that will be deserving will not be able to be represented correctly. Put it like that, because there's more than 15 players in the Big 12 having all Big 12 years this year, but you won't be able to get them all in there.
Okay, this will conclude our call. Thanks, Coach, and thanks everyone for calling in.
Appreciate y'all.